Hello and welcome to Spy Hard's podcast. I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur, kicking it in an airport hangar.
Yes, that's right, Cam. We are indeed kicking it as we have a very special guest joining us to help continue our celebration of Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Who do we have joining us?
Yes, we are talking to actor Ilia Volok, who played the legendary The Fog in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
You added the legendary part, but he's a legend to us.
We love this character. Like, when we reviewed the movie, we talked about how he felt like he could support almost a movie unto itself. Like, there's a whole universe around this character that I think is really interesting. So yes, in the Spy Hard's pantheon, he is legendary.
Is that the FCU?
I feel like that probably is something else, but yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, I'm buying it. I'm all in. Let's do it. Mission Impossible spin-offs. The first one is about the fog. Mission Impossible Origins, the fog.
It's too bad the movie The Fog exists, because that title now is going to get a little confused when you're Googling it.
Well, that is true, but let's get right back on track. Let's step into the fog and talk to Mr. Ilia Volok himself. Cam, roll the interview. And joining us now on the show, continuing our deep dive into Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, though you might know him from some other rather wonderful films, it is Mr. Ilia Volok. Hello, sir. How are you?
How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We've got a lot of films we want to tackle and a limited amount of time, but I want to start us off by asking, I think it's quite a critical question to any actor, is what made you want to get into acting in the first place?
It's an interesting question. I was starting to become a rowing coach.
Wow. Okay.
Because I was back in. So I'm originally from Kyiv, Ukraine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, and I was practicing professionally rowing the crew, and we were. Had the World Championship, and with the Soviet Union team, it was a big deal. We went to Italy anyway, so it was like a natural way for me was just go into the sports college to become a coach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2 years into it, actually I studied a year, then I went to the army because it was a must in the Soviet Union, but I was still rowing for the team, for the army team, and then I went back to continue studying, and that year something has changed, in me. Something I felt like I needed something else, something growing inside, and I think on my parents' side I had some artistic background. My grandfather was a singer anyway, so maybe that played genes, maybe played a role anyway. So I joined it's like amateur theater group.
Mm-hmm.
And we started rehearsing. About a month or two into it, the guy who led that group, he said, you have abilities, natural abilities. You have to apply for one of the theater colleges, but just go in Moscow, because they had the best. And at that time in the Soviet Union, there was like 5 best theater schools, cinema. Anyway, so and I basically went and applied, and it's a competition. It was about 300 people for one spot, and then anyway, so I got accepted. That changed my life. So then I graduated that theater school, and it happened that the same year I had to make a choice and either stay there because I was invited to several theater companies, or go to America. So, it was I met an American girl, and anyway, so that's how I ended up in LA. And basically started from scratch. I didn't speak any English, but I knew I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to continue with and then little by little, after 3 years, I started working. My first got my first job, film in '93, and then after that it started.
And what was the first role you got where you really began to feel like, okay, I can make a career out of this?
It's I never. I mean, seriously, I knew that I have the passion for it, and I wanted to. I didn't see myself doing anything else but being an actor. So this first job, the film job, is actually had some good people in it. It had Samuel Jackson even before the Pulp Fiction. I mean, he was a known actor, and also Robert Downey Jr. played a cameo in it. I mean, he was already known big time actor, but they had like cameos because I think he did a favor for the director. Anyway, and the director of the film, Michael Anthony Hall, he told me you're gonna be, you're gonna do a lot of more after this, and that kind of also gave me hope and. But basically, the response, the an actor job. I mean, an actor's life in LA is basically auditions. You go and audition for one thing, you get one, you don't get another, you don't get. I mean, but I guess the way, I was pretty much, booking jobs on kind of at the regular pace, but also, I think the very important thing that in my opinion, important thing for an actor or for an aspiring actor is the reason why you're doing it. If you just come to LA or to New York for 15 minutes of fame, to see your face on the screen, then you're gonna get disappointed, pretty soon, because it's a lot of rejections. It's a lot of, disappointment. You have to have something beyond that ambition of being, you have to have a love for your craft. And that's, I think, the main thing that basically keeps me going, because I also do theater whenever I get a chance and, I have time. So that's, and that's, I think the real actor should do that.
Well, I was looking through your credits on IMDb, and one of your first movies you worked on, Hail Caesar, was what you were just talking about. But a few credits later, you worked on a film, and I'm going to get to Mission Impossible in a second, but one of the first films you worked on was Jackie Chan's First Strike, or the fourth Super Cop film, whatever you want to call it, which is actually a spy film. But do you have any recollection of doing that role, of working with Jackie Chan? Anything spring to mind going back to that?
That might have been interesting, because it might have been. I have to look at it again, but that might have been a boy's job. It might have. It's not necessarily, because I don't recall. I did like an action film with another Asian American actor, but it was called Best of the Best. It wasn't that. So I think, now you do, as journeyman actor, you do all kinds of stuff. Sometimes they call you, you want to do the ADR, for such and such, and over the years I've done, like, I remember something I did something it was for one of Bruce Willis's films. I forgot, what was that?
Was it Good Day to Die Hard?
Yeah, that one. That was ADR, So, but sometimes it goes on your IMDb. Sometimes I don't know how that works. I don't really keep the track of that. But that one, I don't think I was on the screen for that.
It tracks that with what you're saying, tracks, because the film is full of dubbing.
Yeah.
because it was shot. A lot of it was shot in China, and then some of it was shot in Ukraine, I believe. And
Oh, really?
they did a lot of dubbing on that. So, but you're credited as Russian number 9, but that could, as you say, could have been a voice role. So who knows?
Or maybe it was number 8. Yeah. Nah.
Yeah, you're number 1 in our hearts. Don't worry, not number 9.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
That's what's yeah.
Well, I could do this chronologically, but let's jump to sort of the film that we're digging into this week, which is Mission Impossible. Okay.
Yeah.
And you talk about auditioning, you talk about the process of being cast in these films. How did Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol come to you? How did you first get sort of wind of this role, and how did you get it?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's basically I was working on the film right before, like in so that was 2010, end of 2010, and I was working on another film called Abduction with Alfred Molina and Sigourney Weaver and Michael Nyquist, and the casting director, or one of the casting directors who cast that film. So Michael Nyquist, you know who he was, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, the villain of Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we and the movie he did before that, I played his right hand man, called Abduction, directed by
John Singleton.
Yeah. He passed away, unfortunately. Yeah. We shot it in Pittsburgh. Anyway, so I found out he got the part of the main villain in Mission Impossible, and then basically when they were, from what I understood, they were already finishing the film. They almost shot everything, but they needed. Yes, J.J. Abrams figured out that they need one more scene that connects, things, and they wrote the role for this character called the Fog, and basically I guess they showed it. The casting director showed it to Tom Cruise, and I basically got offered it based on my demo tape. That's my reel, and then one of the few times.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could count on my hands how many times I got straight offers without auditioning, and that was one of the. So that's how I got that role. And interesting, I found out later that, I don't know if you guys know that role they wanted Vanessa Redgrave to do it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they couldn't agree on something. I don't know what was it, but pretty much they changed the cut. Yeah. And they offered it to me. So that was the story. Yeah.
Well, that kind of tracks, because in the film, that scene you have with Tom Cruise and the Bogdan character, I believe, is very very small compared to the rest of the film. Like it's a tiny little thing that's sort of pushed to one side.
Yeah.
And now you can understand why, because they're just trying to flesh something out. And it also, you just illuminated something for me, because the scene before you turn up, there's a reprisal of the character that I believe the actor's name is Andreas Wisniewski, played in the first Mission Impossible film, who worked for Vanessa Redgrave. And so that's why he's in Ghost Protocol, but it's never explained why he comes back, because there's no Vanessa Redgrave. You've just explained it.
Oh, wow. And who does he play in that?
It's like a bodyguard or a henchman character. I think it's unnamed.
Oh, I see. Got it.
He puts the hood on Tom Cruise's head, and then the hood's taken off when you meet him.
Oh, I see. Got it. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so this business is strange.
Well, how familiar were you with the Mission Impossible franchise when you land this role? Are you a fan of them, or?
Well, I've seen. I don't want to say I've seen several of them. I remember the one that Philip Seymour Hoffman was in.
Yeah, part 3.
I like that. I like those. Yeah, I thought very well done. I enjoy them. I mean, I don't want to say I've seen. Do I see? I think I've seen all of them before the Ghost Protocol. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love to know, in that scene, you're playing off of Tom Cruise. What is it like to work opposite Tom Cruise as a scene partner?
You know, he was. I mean, I don't know. People say different than whatever, but it was a great. For me, it was a great experience because he was there. He's never like he was actually because sometimes the stars that do their line and then they need to go whatever that he was there. He said I'm here to help you whatever need, and gave a couple of suggestions to keep it simpler and smaller, whatever, uh, and then he said when we finished, he said you're gonna be happy with what we did. Yeah, so I think he was great. And also, somebody told me, but it was already after I came. I mean, before they had a rock party because they were finishing that. That was an additional basically scene, but I think they had a rock party actually on the day I arrived. But I was sitting in my room working on the lines because, first of all, they wouldn't give you a script.
Mm.
Nobody had a script because they were afraid of people. I even talked to Michael Nyquist. He said I didn't have a script
Yeah.
of the thing. They were just doing their stuff, and so because originally when I got offered this, they say, "Oh, you have a scene with Tom Cruise," and I'm thinking like, okay, it's probably some kind of an action kind of a thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got into the Vancouver and they gave me the pages the day before, I look, it's holy shit. It's like it's a scene. It's like a legit scene. I'm like, so I'm sitting like in my hotel room just working on the lines without it. Anyway, so what I'm saying, but they had that. I think that Sunday they had this, rap party, and Tom Cruise, I think, paid for everyone's. Like they had this chase on the little like sports cars and the whole thing. So he organized that, he for the cast, and so. But my experience working with him was great. Very, very professional. But well, he's one of the producers of this, so he would make sense. He would want to
Mm-hmm.
make it work. Yeah, as the best as possible. Yeah. So
I mean, there seems to be like this sort of mythos I hear from time to time that he's a tough person to work with. But every single person we've interviewed over the years have said that he is a consummate professional and loves making films, which I think is all you can really ask of anyone that works in the film industry.
of course, I have no idea about him, like in personal life or whatever. I have no idea. But it would make sense, especially if you're a producer of this.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you want to have everything go smooth and try to? I mean, yeah. I guess it's all about. I mean, in this business, like probably any other business, about egos and trying to. Sometimes it's hard trying to make ways to step over your own egos and try to kind of things more or less easier. So, but again, from my that couple of days of that experience working with him, it was great. I mean, yeah.
Well, you mentioned sort of the shortened casting process. Let's say it that way. I wanted to know, like, what were they telling you about the character when they were offering it to you, and did that change from when you were offered it to actually when you shot the scene? I know they didn't give you a script until the day before, but what did you know about the folk going into it?
Nothing. I mean, there was not. I had no idea what it is. I mean, they say in the role you're gonna. I think they told me it's a scene with Tom Cruise, but there was no really I only went, let's say I arrived Saturday evening yeah, I think I arrived Saturday evening, and then Sunday I went for the hair. They trimmed my hair, this and that, and that Sunday morning I was able to get the pages. And Monday was the work already. So I looked at the pages, the previous day, and I'm like, oh, man, I just went straight to and started, and I was just basically figuring out, as an actor, you have to, even without knowing a script, you have to make choices that work for you and make it, make it grounded, make it, you create for yourself, those cycle, the bridges to connect, to make it personal and stuff. So that's what I was doing. But I had no idea. No, like Michael Nyquist, he played one of the main. I mean, he was the main bad guy, and he told me he didn't have a script.
Right. So not exactly easy to create a backstory or anything for your character.
No, but you could kind of. Okay, so you could cut the name of the character, Fog. It kind of tells you something. They want to keep it more like, so he wasn't necessarily bad guy, but not necessarily a good guy. He was kind of doing it in a way for his own reasons, selfish reasons, but at the same time he was helping the main character
Mm-hmm.
and doing it like kind of like not an obvious way, suggesting things, and so that's pretty much. So I got that, and that was already something. And then of course with the director, who I thought was great. I mean, he really knew, and he gave me great suggestions, trying different ways and stuff, and then it was, it also helped.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions because, because of the length of the scene and because you're telling us that you sort of filmed this way out of order with the rest of the film, I thought maybe this might have been done by second unit, but Brad Bird was there with you. And so what was Brad Bird like to work with?
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. I love it. Very specific. You could see that he knows he knows how to work with actors. He gave some specific things like, now, for example, he says, now do it like you are the sexiest guy in the world, for example, so that gives an actor already, something to, oh, okay, great. And then that's important because that kind of approach opens actor up. It gives you the like something like creative juices. You start thinking, imagination starts working. So that was and personally not nice. Overall it was really considering that I just got this, and it's a stressful situation, but it was overall it was good, and they didn't cut anything. They kept everything was in, and
One of the things that I really appreciated about the character was that the stakes in the movie at that point are very high. It is potential nuclear war happening.
yeah.
And when you enter the movie, your character is so relaxed and so at ease in his own confidence that there's a real menace to him that I thought was really effective. It felt like a character that could exist an entire movie unto himself. And I'd love to know about kind of finding that stillness in that scene.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what I've learned over the years, and actually, Tom Cruise was reminding me also. Like sometimes, I could be more expressive. Like one of I have like an energy. I could do real big stuff and like get intense, and he said, just keep it, you don't have to move so much, this and that, and that really helped. And I could take, well, I've learned just over the years to take directions and adjust, and Like I don't need too much time. Let's say the director says, "Okay, let's try this way," and that's enough for me, and I could just jump on it and make it work. Not that I'm like bragging about, but that's basically I I I love the auditions where you do it and they say, "Okay, now let's try this." I'm thinking, wow, that means that they like it, and now it's gonna be even better and easier because I could build on that. You know what I mean? It's so yeah, but thank you. I mean, that they always. I think that the stillness is originally overall for me as an actor was not something given. Like some people have natural ability, like kind of do it like small and stuff. I like to play big, not necessarily overact, but like sometimes I get like getting more intense and big, yeah. But the ability of also be laid back and still have the inner life going. That's, I think, it's very important in film. Like let's say I remember Shirley Winters said once a while ago. She said, "In the film, you think loud but talk softly."
Right.
So that's that's. But yeah,
and it's a real contrast to theater where you have to project more, right? Versus the film, like you're drawing the camera in.
But yeah, in a way, also there's one guy, and I love that he said, pretty much in the movie, in the theater, you are the amplifier. In the film, the equipment is amplifier. But the inner life, it's gotta be rich. Even in the theater, inner life has gotta be even more rich because you're reaching out to the to the people. So in the film, you actually, strangely enough, they could cut away. You know what I mean? In theater, it's the actors' media. You can't really. I remember John Malkovich. It's a wonderful little interview. He said they say. Oh, camera doesn't lie, doesn't let you lie, and he said, in my opinion, it's there to make you lie. The cameras, because they could, manipulate the cuts and but regardless, the point is, if it's all about inner life, whether it's stage or film,
Well, I think that one of the reasons why we reached out to you to have this chat in the first place is because that famous saying, there are no small parts, just small actors. That sort of thing. You're on screen for about 3 minutes in this film, maybe 5 minutes total.
Yeah.
But your character, the Fog, jumps out. You've imbued it with a life that has allowed it to be the character to become memorable in a franchise full of villains and questionable people out there in the universe. And so, you putting that thought into it, I think, has made it stand out. And I'm glad you put that effort into the Fog. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you, guys.
Well, my last question for Mission, I think I want to move on to a couple of other films you've done.
Yeah.
Is just looking back on it now, reflecting on the experience, and I know you've sort of spoken about this role a couple of times before. What is the memory you hold on to, like when you think about filming Mission Impossible? Like, what is the moment during that production that you think about? Like, what is your fondest memory, I suppose, is the question.
Interesting. I get when we were discussing, the character, what's it about, and who's the director, and Tom, and I mean, overall in my acting craft and the profession, I also taught students, and because of the experience accumulated and stuff. So, and when we were discussing, for me, it was pretty interesting step. I expressed. I mean, granted, like you are the biggest, next to the biggest movie star in the world.
Yep.
I mean, it's like what, one, maybe two, like people like him. I don't know. so and they were talking about the scene, and I said, well, also I think it was something like that I ultimately Fog, she doesn't want to destroy the world. His intention is to save the world, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I got to the point of free enough to express my opinion, and I thought like reaction of Tom Cruise was interesting. He's like, he thought about it, registered it, like, oh, you know what I mean? It's something maybe he didn't think about, but it kind of occurred to him, like it was like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like something new, and that kind of stuck in my memory, you know what I mean? So it was like being like, even you there for like 2 days or a couple of days, but it felt like I was an equal like footing out in discussing of the scene. I think it's it's important. I guess I've gained enough like inner freedom to be in that particular situation, because it's a different thing when you're working like maybe for a month or whatever, you're discussing stuff you already, but like just to come in and for one, for a couple of days, share your take on it is, I think that's what was memorable for me in when we were working on that thing.
Right. I mean, and the movie came out fantastically well. It's one of the best Mission Impossibles in my mind, so it's a good one to be a part of as well.
Yeah, and blowing up Kremlin was fun.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Red alert, SpyHards, we are shaking things up over on the Patreon page.
That's right, we are launching an exclusive new show where we tackle the exploits of the small screen's greatest secret agents, like Jack Bauer, George Smiley, and beyond.
And don't forget, every month you also get 2 Agents in the Field episodes where we decode the adventures of your favorite spy actors in their biggest non-spy movies. But Cam, tell the people what we have coming up next.
Scott, if there's one thing spies are known for, it's traveling. And so you and I are going on a holiday, a Roman holiday, with the 1953 romantic comedy classic starring Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. Hop on a Vespa and join us, everyone, because it's going to be a delight.
So strap on your Condor Man wings and soar into the future with us over at patreon.com/spyhards.
But before Big O zaps us with a red pulsating laser, let's get back to the Spy Jinx. Speaking of a Russian character, I want to jump over to Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls.
Yeah.
And last night I was actually watching the Directors Guild tribute to Steven Spielberg. And I would just love to know, I'm a huge fan of his work, about being directed in an action sequence. You're in the famous sequence in that film where Indiana Jones is on the bike and being pulled into the car by your character. I'd love to know about just being directed by Spielberg.
Yeah, it was, that the chase in the car, the one that it was shot on the grounds of Yale University.
Mm-hmm.
And so that sequence was actually second unit.
Right.
The one that we chasing, you were getting out. But the one in the cafeteria, they were doing pickups for that. Wow, yeah, because they had the location in at the Yale, then they had the whole sequence in they shot it in Hawaii, but Latin America, whatever, yeah. So I didn't go there because it was a different set of bad Russians, and then there was the cafeteria was shot in Paramount lot. So and that was interesting. It was in this tiny cafeteria that they created where they, I don't know if it exists there permanently. It's like a cafeteria, and there was Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, and George Lucas
Mm-hmm.
in one. And I'm thinking, in this tiny little space, probably 1/3 of the whole Hollywood money. It occurred to me, like in this, like, yeah, like it was pretty. I mean, Spielberg is so in that particular. So we shot that the cafeteria, and then the thing when we run after him on the street, and you're looking there, and he was just wasn't he. And that's what I've heard before. He doesn't give like specific direct. He just said, "Okay, speak softer or like louder." You know what I mean? And it's pretty much, but just the whole feeling from him was very kind of soft spoken, kind of like intellectual kind of a guy, very uh, interesting. So that was, and like I said, the sequel. I mean, the chase, the other chase was directed by the stunt coordinator of the second unit. And I remember once, I mean, we had like a direct. I was at the craft services, and I get munching something, and he comes up and like, how's it? How here? That was just a brief like a conversation, but the amount of security they had, it was just unbelievable. Like they had these big guys, bodyguards. I remember we were shooting something in Yale, and this Harrison Ford, like, and I think Calista Flock, his wife, she came to visit, and we're standing, and I worked with him on Air Force One,
Yeah.
So, and I come up to him, and there's this bodyguard looking at me like, I'm like, dude, like, I'm part of the cast. What the, it's like they're doing their job, like he looks at me like, and I said, Mr. Ford, we worked together in the Air Force One. He said, like, Ilia, he remembers it, but I killed you, and I look at him and said, Mr. Ford, you killed everyone, he said, like, yeah, I killed everyone. But like, it was crazy. They wouldn't let you, and granted, it was like, what, 2007.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let you pull out any phone or anything. We had to, before we went on the shoot, we had to go to Universal, sign like bunch of papers from the FBI. There was some stuff with FBI or CIA because they told us somebody stole Lucas's music from Star Wars or something like that. So we had to sign a bunch of stuff, and but it was, I mean, it was great. I mean, great experience being part of that. But like specifically directed by Spielberg, it was that scene in the cafeteria, which was, we just come up there and talk to the guys, and then running out. And I think, he was. He didn't give me. I don't remember if he was telling another guy, Dmitry, who actually passed away. Yeah, he gave him some more like, I think he wasn't quite doing what they wanted, and so he was telling him some like specifics. For me, it was basically we're running out there, looking for this guy, and that was pretty much it. There was no much interaction,
That's fair
with Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of interaction, you mentioned Air Force One, and I wanted just to throw in one quick question there because you did get to beat up Harrison Ford for a little while, so that must have been quite fun.
It was, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, any sort of memories of doing that scene with him, and obviously you had that meeting later on. But yeah, that's like early '90s, early on in your career as well. Like, and you get to have a fist fight with Harrison Ford.
Yeah, that was exactly they were shot in '96,
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting. Like we in the fall before in '95, I was working on this. That was one of the greatest. I mean, memories I had. Also, this movie, Deadly Voyage. It was an original HBO movie that was actually co-produced HBO and BBC.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great experience. It was written by this director, I think Steven Stewart. I don't remember. I forgot. You know, but it was based on original story about this Ghanaian stowaways and Russian Ukrainian sailors, and we shot in Ghana, and and then we in London. Anyway, so the casting directors of that film, they came to the screening. I mean, the casting directors of Air Force One came to the screening of that film, and that's how they saw. And then they invited me to audition for Logan Peterson, and then I had like the meeting with Logan Peterson. It was fantastic. The whole experience, and I saw in the interview was sitting there, what's his name, the William H. Macy, who played one of the parts, and I just saw him in Fargo.
Yeah.
Like I was mad. I came up to him and said, like, it was incredible. And then when I found out that Gary Oldman is playing the main villain, because I was like, I was such a fan of Gary Oldman. He was one of my favorite. Granted, I'm a young, actor who's just starting out in all these things, and like I was like amazed that I would be working together with Gary Oldman. When I saw him on the set, I like Gary. I just wanted to express, he said he looks at me, we'll have some fun, and he was fantastic. Yeah, it was funny. I remember he was imitating Robert De Niro on the set when we were doing this, and then on the day when we shot the scene with Harrison Ford, the fight, yeah. So it was basically the first who gets killed, yeah. But interesting, that fight made to all of because there's several fights in the film, yeah. But this particular, like anytime they were running biography on Harrison Ford and stuff, they would show that fight. People were telling me, "Oh, I saw you on this," and also David Letterman, when Harrison Ford was promoting it in '97, the movie. I remember like now, he was actually showing on David Letterman. He was showing that fight, and David Letterman was introducing him. Harrison Ford was saying, "Well, I'm kicking somebody's ass here," and David Letterman says, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Harrison Ford, the ass-kicking president," and he showed this. It was on late night with David Letterman. Anyway, so that the day when we shot that fight, there was hardly anyone. It was just a crew, Harrison Ford and me, and we were working with with a stuntman also. Because I didn't do that fight, the whole thing. It was just stuff, but then. Not getting him knocked over with a chair was the stunt guy doing it. But there was a point that on the set came Jack Nicholson.
Oh, wow.
That was interesting because he was shooting next door. So they were shooting at Sony Studios, yeah? So they were shooting as good as it gets, right? On the next stage. So I remember he was wearing this red short, and he comes in, everybody's like kind of steps aside, and he said, "I'm not interrupting, just came to say hello." and then, and then they watched the footage of this fight, and Harrison Ford said, "Well, I'm playing the president, and Jack Nicholson, well, I don't know about president." and then they had a break, and they got on this little cart, two people cart, and they drove somewhere. And somebody was saying they probably went to smoke pot. so, so that was that was a cool experience. And Wolfgang Peterson is great. I remember it was because I remember when I did the audition, I did some, I don't remember, so I made specific choices. And I remember when we met for the meeting, just the interview, he said, "The reason you are here, because you're a very good actor," he told me. And that I remember. That was nice to hear, Yeah, that was, overall, it was a great experience. And those people also, which rarely happens, they let me, I was still, they put you on, they put me on 8 weeks, contract. But it doesn't mean you work every day. They put you on a weekly, you might have 1 day a week, But they technically, their priority, you have to, be available. So I booked during that time also Oliver Stone movie, U-Turn. There was a movie with the Sean Penn, and they were gracious enough to let me go and do it. So that doesn't happen that often. They still, I was on a contract with them, but they let me do that. That was great.
Well, you've worked with a lot of great directors. You just mentioned Oliver Stone there, but someone I was interested in just knowing if you had any memories of was when you did Charlie Wilson's War in the helicopter sequence. If you had any memories of Mike Nichols, who was, of course, a great director himself.
Yeah, Mike, he was, he's great. I mean, The Graduate, I love that. And I didn't have any, there was they shot that on somewhere in or I think Anaheim. They had this big sound stage, and they shot that sequence of us, bombing the Afghanis and getting blown away. He was. I didn't have any specific. I don't want to say they had some kind of a great report. It was more about doing, what he was telling you, and it was not much. I guess the part wasn't. I mean, it was just, I think I was for a couple of days, and it didn't really establish any kind of a relation. For example, with the Mission Impossible, you get more personal. You get to know the director more. There is more chemistry. Over there, it wasn't nothing to write home about.
That's fair enough.
It was. I just remember. I remember it was. In this business, is everything is or a lot of it is interconnected. I had this jacket. Charlie Wilson's War, they sent us, and I was working on Indiana Jones later, because I think it was same year, but later or something, or the year before. And in Indiana Jones, there was a guy, and this guy was Tom Hanks' son.
Yep.
And he played a small part, in the library, a guy in a library or something like that in Indiana Jones. And he saw my jacket and he said, "Oh, you were in this?" My father, we did. And do you know what happened because they were shooting in Morocco, yeah? And he said, they were shooting in the mountains in Morocco, that sequence with Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And he said the whole set they built was blown away by the winds.
Oh, wow.
It was crazy, and they had to reshoot everything in LA.
Wow.
A lot of So that's what he told me. I remember, and they were, the like I don't remember the exactly, but it was the whole like exterior stuff with I think it's like there's like refugees or something. Anyways, they had to reshoot the whole thing that they shot in Morocco.
Well, I want to just jump in because I know we're fast approaching our out time, and I have a couple of quick questions I want to throw your way before we let you go.
Sure.
First and foremostly, we barely scratched the surface of your career, looking at the roles you've done over the years. For you, what was the most rewarding role you've done so far?
In the film, in the film or TV,
We'll go with film. Obviously, we haven't spoken much about it, but you're very prolific in theatre as well, and I don't think we've done any justice to your work in theatre in this discussion. But for film, people can go and watch it. That's what I want to do afterwards.
There was some interesting also work in television, like roles, But
sure.
if we're talking about major, of course, the major Hollywood films, they're rare to come. I mean, it's the television is much more up to, but
well, let's go with television.
Oh, with television, for the film, I'd say still, I think, Mission Impossible and Gemini Man.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the one, because the size of the scene, there's something, going on. And, there's, so those two, it's Gemini Man with Will Smith. I mean, the movie, Ang Lee directed it. He did okay, but he didn't do the way they
wanted.
Expected. They wanted,
yeah.
I mean, for the television is several. So for the film, is those two, I'd say. For the television, I mean, there would be I think this thing called The Baskets. It's a comedic role with comedian. He's of Greek descent. Like the Las Vegas comedy movies. The one with Brad
The Hangover.
Huh?
The Hangover.
Yeah. He played one of the characters.
Oh, Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah. So he had his series on what they call The Baskets. So there was a nice I played this circus guy, the ringmaster, whatever that was fun, and there was some other stuff like guest spots on TV shows. The ones that I like, it's like I played a bad, they call it Without a Trace. I played this bad guy, but he was falling in love with the main, the actress. So they has some kind of a twist in that. So this is just from the top of my head. The movie, unfortunately, there was another great experience for me, but it wasn't released in the U.S. I got to work 2 years ago. I got to work with Polanski.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And that was a great experience. I mean, they had Mickey Rourke in it, John Cleese, other European stars, but that was just great, because I think he's something really special, the way he directs and the way specificity, and that was called The Palace. It was like a comedy, but it was I would put that also as one of my favorite ones.
Okay, well, there's plenty to check out there. Last question then before we let you go. And this question's been asked to everyone we've ever had on the show. So no pressure, but a little bit of pressure. Ilia, what is your favorite spy movie of all time?
I,
We talk about spy movies every week. Yeah, we talk about spy movies every week. That's our speciality. So like, we always ask everyone, like, what is their favorite?
well, that would be Mission, Mission Impossible. Yeah, I mean, I'm not maybe not necessarily. I mean, no, it all depends. I mean, genre is the one thing, but I think it also depends on the execution. It could be any
Mhm.
kind of a genre, but depends on the talent and the nuances. And yeah, but I would say, of course, Mission Impossible.
And you did mention Mission Impossible 3 and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And
Yeah,
that is a fantastic movie.
yeah, of course, and also the acting. I think it's really really important. Man, I wish I had time also to watch more stuff. There is so much who I missed. Later. I have a 2-year-old, and
Congratulations.
yeah. Now it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit more, but yeah. Um,
Well, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with that answer because you were in a Mission Impossible film. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to choose. Ilia, it's been an absolute pleasure talking Mission and other things with you today, breaking down The Fog and much more. We'll put some links in the show notes below. People can check out the films and TV shows you suggested. But otherwise, it's been a genuine pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for having me. I hope I did okay with you.
You killed it.
You've passed the audition. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. There you go, folks. That was our chat with Mr. Ilia Volok. I want to thank him once again for taking the time to sit down with us today and unpack his time working on Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, plus some other wonderful stories about, Air Force One I wasn't quite expecting, and Jackie Chan's first strike. Quite the career that man has had.
That is my favorite thing about talking to supporting actors who show up like throughout so many different character roles in their careers, is that there's all these specific stories tied to all of these movies, but because they're smaller parts, they work so much more often.
Yeah.
And so like Ilia, we just got like the tip of the iceberg of Ilia's career in this interview. But being able to bounce between Steven Spielberg, Oliver Stone, Wolfgang Peterson, all these great directors. Jack Nicholson. If you go through and just look at his filmography, he has worked with so many legendary directors. It's actually pretty darn incredible. And on a lot of movies that were big hits too. And so I just loved hearing these stories. It was like, I was a fly on the wall as he's telling like these stories about, Jack Nicholson swinging by the set of Air Force One. Like, I didn't know we'd be getting that story when we started recording this interview, but it's moments like that that make, interviews like this a lot of fun.
Absolutely, and I hope you all enjoy that side of it too. For me, it's also about getting an insight into what it's like working on the films that we really love talking about, and just hearing how blind he was going into playing the role of the Fog in Mission, and then like the sort of overwhelming support he got from cast and crew whilst doing that. Basically, I think 2 days worth of shooting to put that scene together. From getting notes from Tom Cruise to Brad Bird jumping in as well, and they having the rap party the same day he's basically shooting it, which I think is kind of crazy. This is the stuff I love doing the SpyMaster interviews for. And but like, what was a highlight for you? You want to talk about, Cam?
Well, I mean, just hearing him talk about how that scene with the fog was basically a little bit of a fix to smooth out the plotting, and like lots of movies have these sequences that are inserted to help clear up maybe the narrative tangle that's going on.
Yeah.
A lot of these scenes can feel clunky, and yet when you watch this scene, it exists, within like the framework of the Mission Impossible universe in a really interesting way, where it kind of like gives a hint to these figures that operate kind of on the margins that can wander into Ethan Hunt's adventures, but you could totally believe exist just outside of them as well. And the Fog, I think, really sums that up, and he's a great counterbalance to the Bogdan character who Tom Cruise, saves from the prison early on. Like, the fact that Bogdan leads to the Fog, it makes so much sense when you see the movie. And to hear him talk about how this was, something done in reshoots just to make the movie make sense, it could have been clunky, but it isn't. Like, it feels like a scene that I just loved going back and rewatching last night.
It's kind of crazy. I didn't know that whole side of it going into it. It wasn't like I'd read this on IMDb trivia or something. I didn't know this was not necessarily reshoots, but pickup shots or something like that they would have done. But like it was JJ. It was JJ's idea. He'd obviously seen a rough cut of the film and thought, no, there's a few things that are missing here. We need to sort of dot some I's and cross some T's. And very much a JJ thing of like, these little moments of straying away. But and one thing I think we remarked on this in the review, and like you said, it does sort of exist in its own little world, and this sort of explains that because Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt sort of disappears for a little while from the film and meets up with the guy with the bag, puts it over his head, goes and meets the Falcon, and comes back with more information. So I'm guessing that's where the sort of missing point was in the film. They had to plug it in. But in a different film, in a different filmmaker's hands, this could have felt very clunky.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have to go and get exposition now. Excuse me, bleep bloop, goes to get exposition. But this, it doesn't it doesn't sort of throw itself out to you. You didn't really notice it. It's only when you're looking for it that you find it. But then learning this, talking to Ilia, I think it was really useful insight.
Well, and also, like, this was supposed to be Max from the first Mission Impossible. And when Vanessa Redgrave wasn't available, this was where they went instead. And you can understand how a lot of other movies would say, we couldn't get who we wanted. Okay, let's just, like, kind of make this scene small. Like, let's just kind of get through it quickly. But that's not what happened. He talked about collaborating with Tom Cruise and how they were really trying to find a moment and create a character and a world. And, like, it just shows to me not only like the professionalism of Tom Cruise as a producer and understanding there's no small scenes, we need to make every scene work, but also to like Brad Bird, who works in the world of animation and knows that like there's no such thing as a frame that's boring. Like you have to have every moment count for something. And I think that's the case here because the fog clicks when I watch this movie, and a lot of movies this character wouldn't.
No. I think I said it in the interview. There's no small parts, only small actors. I think Ilia really sort of imbues the character with a bit of life that could have been lost elsewhere. And just speaking to sort of Tom Cruise for a second as well, it's nice to consistently hear that he's very involved in these films. And, what could have been just a little day's work for him, just plugging a hole in the plot. He's still invested. He's giving notes to this actor that he's spending a day with because he wants what's best for the film. And I think I hope that's something he still does because it's quite remarkable. And he was there, I'm guessing, to read for him off screen as well.
Yeah, and you and I have interviewed a lot of people who've worked with Tom Cruise at this point.
Yep.
And you mentioned in the actual interview that people have this idea of this mythos of kind of this weirdness of working with Tom Cruise, and yet we hear it time and time again of how professional he is, how prepared he is, and how giving as an actor. It was interesting that he talked about Jack Nicholson at one point in this interview. And I remember this story about Jack Nicholson doing A Few Good Men, where he does the big, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth, that big speech, and how he shot his close-up, did that scene, and then recreated it for every single actor and every bit of coverage they needed. And at a certain point, Rob Reiner, the director, said, hey, Jack, you can go, like, we can handle all this. And Jack Nicholson just said, hey, I love acting. That's what I'm here for. And you can see that Tom Cruise had a similar mentality when he's shooting with another actor. It's like, no, I'm here till the end.
Yeah, a remarkable thing to do, really, because it goes to sort of sell the film.
Yeah, and also Tom Cruise worked on A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson. Maybe that's something he's picked up along the way with some of these great pros.
It's all connecting. We mentioned the Jack Nicholson story as well. I mean, another highlight for me, obviously he hasn't done, he's not too sure how much of it he actually did, but it was nice to hear a little bit about Jackie Chan's first strike. I'm assuming it was probably audio work, but it's not often we can talk to anyone involved in that film.
No, very true. Like that one really jumped out to me when I was going through his filmography for research, where I'm like, holy smokes, we could talk to someone who worked on Jackie Chan's first strike. In what capacity still remains a little unknown, but nonetheless, it was fun to have a little bit of insight there. I loved hearing him just talk about working on a Spielberg production. I wasn't sure about how much was second unit with that chase sequence. He kind of nailed that down for me because a lot of it's kind of character specific. So I thought there might be a little more of a Spielberg hand on that one. But it was just really funny to hear him talk about, being in a room with Harrison Ford, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg. Like, that's got to be surreal as an actor.
Yeah. Probably a bit nerve-wracking too, I imagine.
Yeah. And it's funny how, he's talking about doing the action scene with Harrison Ford in Air Force One, which, as he said, heavily promoted in the press cycle at that point. but he was like also then on the receiving end of the famous Indiana Jones punch in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So that's not a bad place to be as an actor.
No, I mean, there's a lot of things he could easily put on his sizzle reel. Let's put it that way.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I do love doing these interviews. It just gives us a chance to have these discussions. The only other thing, I mean, he said sort of he broke down doing Indiana Jones a little bit. I mean, if I had more time, I'd probably dive more into some of the other work he's done. He's got quite a few other spy movies. You mentioned Charlie Wilson's War, which it doesn't seem like it was a particularly memorable set for him, which is fair enough. But he's done a lot of TV work as well.
I mean, that's a story of a, character actor, right? Like, you may work with a great director, but it's not necessarily a scene that you walk away going, oh yeah, I really got to, work being molded by Mike Nichols in that scene.
Right.
It's like, but a different movie, that is the case. So it kind of depends on the job. And we didn't ask him about working with David Fincher on The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. David Fincher's known to be very meticulous himself. Like, there may be a story there. I don't know. Part 2? Who knows?
The fog thickens.
Sure.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that is quite PG, Scott. But hey ho.
Or is it like the fog rolls in again?
Yeah, that's the PG version for sure.
That is indeed.
Okay. Well, that was our chat with Mr. Ilia Volok. I want to thank him once again for talking to us, and that about wraps up our discussion on Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol.
It does indeed. This has been a lot of fun, and it's a movie that I'm quite passionate about in terms of the Mission Impossible series. So I'm looking forward to where we go next with this series.
Indeed. The Macquarie years will be beginning, I guess, next time.
Yeah, that's stay tuned, folks. That might be a little further down the road.
Yeah, more to come on that. But thank you all for joining us for the first 4 Mission Impossible films. I hope you've had a good time breaking them down. Some have made the knock list, some haven't. But there you go. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Cam, the question goes to you, sir. What are we talking about next week?
Well, Scott, September marks the 75th anniversary of The Third Man. And you and I have not reviewed this film, but we are going to do a little bit of a celebration for this momentous anniversary. And Scott, who are we going to talk to?
We are sitting down to celebrate. We're starting a new episode style called Spy Hard Spotlight. We're sitting down with Mr. John Walsh, who has written the official story of the film, The Third Man. It's a great book, goes way behind the scenes of the film. A lot of insight in there too. For anyone who's a fan of the film, I've already got a copy and read it through. Very much recommend it and think you all should go and check it out. But that's going to be our unique way of taking a look at The Third Man without necessarily diving deep into its wonders and thinking about the knock list, but we're going to definitely celebrate 75 years of The Third Man. And Cam, you recently came back from Vienna last year as well, so I'm sure you have some Third Man stories you can share.
I'm still lost in the sewers, Scott. I'm recording from there, and the reverb is terrible.
It really is. There's a lot of post-editing to get this sounding good.
Help, Scott, help.
Well, your mission, folks, should you choose to accept it, is to join us next time as we raise a glass and celebrate Carol Reed's 1949 film, The Third Man. If you like what you heard on this episode, please consider joining us over on Patreon at patreon.com/spyhards. And if you don't already, make sure to follow us on social media at spyhards. That's SPYHARDS. But until next time, folks, Cam and I are off on a buggy ride with Harrison Ford and Jack Nicholson.